Welcome to Shauns Take, brought to you by the Keystone Sports Network. Here are your hosts, Shaun and Jim.
Hello and welcome to Shauns Take, brought to you by the Keystone Sports Network. I'm Jim Galante. He is Sean Gold. Sean, another huge sports week we've got going on. We just wrapped up the Masters, baseball in full swing. We've got NBA playoffs coming up. A lot happening, my friend.
A lot going on, a lot to talk about. It has been, continuing on with good stretches in sports. So some interesting topics to discuss today, Jim. From college football to the Masters to NBA, we're going to hit it all.
And we're actually starting with college football, Sean. It's middle of April, which should mean talking about spring games and the like. But no, we've got to hit NIL again. Thank you to Tennessee and Nico Iamaleava. I have it spelled out phonetically in my notebook, Sean, and that's my last attempt at pronouncing his name. From here on out, it's just going to be Nico. Sean, here's the starting quarterback of Tennessee, and I don't know if folks have forgotten already. It was a couple years ago that Tennessee bringing Nico in caused controversy and got the lawyers involved in a lawsuit. The NCAA said, hey, you can't pay a guy to come to your school, which is what Tennessee did. Tennessee fought that. They won against the NCAA. And here we have Nico in the news a couple years later because, well, when money's involved, that means we're going to start seeing holdouts. He had a holdout. He wanted to essentially double his $2 million salary at Tennessee. And he held out a practice. He apparently just ghosted the coaches and his teammates, was totally unavailable to them. And Tennessee, and I'm going to say it, Sean, to their credit, they said, that's it. We're not going to give in to you. We've had enough. And they split ways. What do you think, Sean? Is this a precursor of what's to come? Or did Tennessee, by saying, hey, we're not going to be intimidated that way, has Tennessee put a lid on this type of action?
Unfortunately, I don't know that it's an official lid on this type of action. I think we saw the first instance where this has happened, and I think it's going to continue to happen moving forward. It's going to be interesting to see if that's more next year or maybe 2-3 years from now. But for a little context for everyone, I've always been on the side of the players in NIL. And maybe that's just being a former player. I know if I was in that situation where I could, get some serious money that could alter the course of my life, it's a big thing for somebody at that age, especially if you are smart with that money and don't, just go blow it on a nice car in college. But if you set it up, you can really set yourself up for a very financially successful life. And I'm not going to discredit anybody for doing that. Now, this is the first time I have not sided with the players here. This is taking NIL way too far. And I know a lot of people don't like NIL, and I completely understand the perspective of how it changes college football. And for anyone who kind of thinks that, even if you would say that maybe you wouldn't transfer schools for money, if you're a father of one of these athletes or a mother of one of these athletes, and all of a sudden a school tells your kid, hey, you can get $1 million to go play at another program and have this success. It's hard as a parent to say, child, don't go get life-changing money for you right now that can really set you up in an incredible position. So I think that's kind of my viewpoint on it, that it's good overall, and I get it changes the spectrum, but I've always been for it until now. A NIL holdout is taking things way, way, way too far for me, Jim. And it's disappointing because I like what NIL does, and I know it's still kind of a controversy subject on how deals are put in place and who really gets the money and is it fair and everything like that. And those are things that still need to be worked out. I thought all that could be solved, though. This right here, I don't think can be solved. I don't even like holdouts in the NFL. They never end well for a player, and I get it's a different situation, but we're trying to make this NFL now. And it's already become a business. College sports have become a true business since NIL came. This is a whole other step, and I'm very disappointed that this is what's happened. And I'm very disappointed in this entire situation for somebody in college to hold out because $2 million wasn't good enough at this point for you. And you thought you deserved 4. It's a massive step in the wrong direction, in my opinion.
My take on it, Shaun, is that I also feel like the players deserve money. They're the only ones who weren't getting rich. Okay, the coaches, administrators, conference officials, they were all making money off the back of the players. So the players did deserve something, and they weren't getting it. Now, the problem in this situation, I think it was the style, the method that Nico used. The holdout, the not showing up for practice. I have no doubt there have been other players who've asked for raises and done it in a much different way. The thing is, there was a contract in place. So he was saying, essentially he was breaking his contract by saying he wants more money. Now, I think there's also a culture that goes on in different schools. And Tennessee, as I said, they were front and center a couple of years ago when they gave the money originally to Nico. Okay. So it was all about the money a couple of years ago. So no reason to be surprised. It's all about the money again here. And whether you blame the player, his father, his agent, financial advisor, I think they overplayed their hand. They didn't play it well, but it was, I guess, their right to do it, and they have to live with the repercussions. I give credit to Tennessee on this one because they said no. They didn't give in, and I think Tennessee will be better off for having said no.
I completely agree. I think what a distraction for your locker room as well to say, hey, somebody leveraged us to an additional $2 million in college. It's not like he won the Heisman Trophy last year. So I'm very on the side of Tennessee here. I think putting their foot down and saying, you know what, $2 million was probably too much to begin with. So to now go and double it is just crazy to me. So credit to Tennessee. To your original question, we're going to see. I think we will have more holdout instances in the future, but I hope that Tennessee can be a leader in saying, enough is enough with some of this. We'll give you your money. I mean, you give me $2 million right now. I'm extremely happy. And I'm not going to go pressure you to say, no, give me 4 instead. So I'm glad Tennessee put their foot down. And now what we do know about this is that it all happened. Now, Nico is now in the transfer portal. He's not returning to Tennessee. So, Jim, would you go after him if you're another program?
No, I would not. Now, I'm sure somebody will, but I think Nico's team, by team I mean his financial team, his advisor, agent, father, rest of the family, might be a bit surprised because as much as college football, like any other sport, is about the acquisition of talent, there's still probably football more than any other sport. There's the camaraderie, the teamwork that goes on in the locker room. And already, I would love to hear what Nico's teammates at Tennessee feel about it. And I suspect even if they don't go public with it, there's a lot of them who will not be happy with what transpired. And now as you go looking for another home, a couple things play into this. Remember, we're now into the spring where teams have already invested in spring practice. Many of them have named their starter, or if there's a competition for it, there's multiple guys vying for it already. To bring someone in from the outside now, it's not a good look. It probably has a chance to interrupt another locker room unless I am just totally desperate for a quarterback, Shaun. No, I would go elsewhere. I'm not going to be offering Nico $4 million, nor $2 million, nor $1 million.
And my biggest question with this is, what did Nico do to earn this? And I mean that in no disrespect to him, but let's just break down the numbers and take a look. in what was supposed to be one of the most unstoppable offenses in the country. We saw Tennessee first 3-4 weeks of the season have a really good offense, and then we saw everything switch, and all of a sudden their defense stepped up, and their defense is what led them to the playoffs. We saw a lot of games where Tennessee could not move the ball, and we don't even need to talk about their playoff game against Ohio State where they looked completely outmatched on that field. But if we break it down by the numbers, Nico's stats: 2,616 yards, 19 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Not a bad season. I wouldn't say those are eye-popping numbers, though. Let's compare. Cam Ward, 4,313 yards, 39 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. That's why Cam Ward's about to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. Let's look at Shedeur Sanders, 4,134 yards, 37 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Another guy who's going to be either the second or third quarterback picked in this year's NFL draft. Those are numbers where you could say, hey, you might have some leverage to get a little more NIL money. The 2,600 yards and 19 touchdowns is not screaming $4 million when I think if Cam Ward said, I'm going to stay another year and transfer, I don't think he would have even gotten $4 million. He probably would have been on that $3 million deal or something like that. And let's not just take 2 guys who are going to be probably the top 2 quarterbacks taken in the draft. Let's go with somebody closer to home for a lot of our listeners here. Drew Allar, 3,327 yards, 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions in what was considered one of the best rushing teams in the country last year in Penn State's offense. Drew Allar had significantly, I would say, better numbers than Nico did. Yet, I don't think we're going to go give Drew Allar $4 million if he said, hey, I want to transfer, you give me $4 million. So the numbers aren't even in a good leverage point. I thought Nico had actually a disappointing year to me based off of what the expectations were and what I thought Tennessee's offense could be. So for you to have that type of season, not even a historic season, and then go say, I'm going to hold out for $4 million blows my mind.
And the other aspect to this, you mentioned Drew Allar from Penn State. He chose to return to Penn State. I'm sure he didn't get top dollar, and not just because it's a Penn State guy. We see this in other places. I'll use Jeremiah Smith as my example from Ohio State. Probably the best player in the country, Shaun, and he was asked about the opportunity to transfer. And by the way, I have said on this show, if I were Jeremiah Smith and advising him, I'd tell him to enter the portal, become a free agent, find out what you're worth out there. And to his credit, he said he's not looking outside because he's happy where he's at. This is where he wants to be. Now, I am sure they are taking care of him at Ohio State. He's not going to be pleading poverty anytime soon. But I suspect if he made himself a free agent, he could make himself a lot of money. He chose not to. My final thought on the whole topic, Shaun, though, is also just like in the NFL, the quarterback is such an important position in college. That player will probably be the highest paid player on most teams. But it makes me start to wonder, with so many highly regarded quarterbacks coming out of high school, these 5-star guys turning out to be a bust, okay? I'm wondering if that money might be spent more intelligently or smartly by investing it in the rest of the team. You know, that $4 million or even the $2 million that Nico's getting. Hey, how about if I decided to build the best offensive line in the country, the best defensive line, put a lot of other talent available for another quarterback? It would be interesting to me over the next couple of years to see how teams do that, manage their money. All right, let's really shift gears here, Shaun. The big event, probably the biggest event in golf. Now, there's some debate. Some would say it's the Open as opposed to the Masters. But I think the Masters is the one that most people are interested in. And this year had the great storyline. Rory McIlroy, he was going for the career Grand Slam. The only thing that was missing was the Masters. And I'll tell you what, that this Sunday afternoon, what a roller coaster ride, what drama. It was so much fun. And just to add to it, we ended up having to go into a playoff, Shaun.
It was incredible. And I think on Saturday night, I almost think we all were expecting something to happen. We have seen Rory have really bad Sundays in the Masters, to be honest about it. And I know in the back of all of our heads, I think a lot of people were cheering for Rory because it's such a historic moment for him. And he deserves it. He's been a good guy. He's stuck the course and he's just come up short time and time again at the Masters. And going into Sunday, I don't think there was anyone that was overly confident that he was going to have a perfect Sunday and bring home that gold jacket for the first time in his career. So the way it played out, I think, was perfect. It's a Masters that's going to be talked about for a very, very long time. The time Rory McIlroy got over the hump, completed that career Grand Slam right there, and I'm super, super happy for him. And the picture I always have and will always have in my head now is him dropping to his knees after sinking that putt in the overtime period right there. And you just saw the weight of the world lifted off of his shoulders. You saw him overcome so much in that moment. And to get that gold jacket for him is incredible. And I'm very happy that it played out this way for him.
And I'm also fascinated by the coverage of it and the storyline. Obviously, it was Rory, going for the career Grand Slam. It was almost match play, one-on-one, the final pairing. And what's fascinating to me is it's Justin Rose who led the tournament for the first two rounds. He was just completely forgotten, like everybody else was. And lo and behold, he didn't fit the storyline for the Masters. He wasn't part of it. And all of a sudden, here he is, part of the playoff, he and Rory. Now, I must admit, I found myself rooting for McIlroy, through the round. And after he dramatically missed the putt on 18, which sent it into the playoffs, I was really disappointed. And you thought, here we go again for Rory. Now, to his credit, he came back first playoff hole on the same hole, number 18. He came through. He won it. Had to be happy for him. But it does make me wonder, next year, Shaun, what's going to be the storyline at the Masters? We don't have Tiger around really as a contender anymore. Rory completed the Grand Slam. I'll be curious to see what they find as a storyline. And they do need that storyline. With Rory going for the career Grand Slam, the TV numbers were bonkers for this one, Shaun.
It was. I think in the PGA's best interest, they're going to try to give Tiger Woods some super healer to that Achilles in his back and say, hey, give us one more run here at 50 years old. It's going to be hard to follow it up. It really will be. This was, like I said, one of the ones that's going to be talked about for a very, very long time. And they're going to have to, try to find that next up and coming golfer and see if there's, someone new who, hey, could this be the start of something really special? Because even with other high profile guys, it's not going to be the same story that we had this year. So it's going to be interesting. They're going to have to try to spin something some way and maybe introduce, hey, this is a new generation that's coming in and we're going to shake up the game. But it's we got some time before it happens, but it's going to be a very, very difficult one to follow up after what we saw transpire in this Masters. And now let's switch the sports once again from college football to golf. Now we're going to the NBA. The play-in tournament, Jim, has officially begun, and it's now getting into playoff season. I'm excited about it, but let's first talk about the play-in tournament. Have you liked what we've seen in the past years with the NBA play-in? Do you like that it's not just the top 8 and now the top 10 kind of have a shot to duke it out and get into the playoffs?
It's interesting. I think the NBA has gotten less and less interesting over the years. There was a time when I was really into it. Not the case anymore. And I wait for the playoffs really to get into it. I think the interest is there. And it just seems kind of kludgy what they have set up for this play-in. For those who don't know, here are the rules, okay? In each conference, the East and West, The number 7, 8, 9, and 10 seeds have what they call a play-in, one and done. So what you have is number 7 plays 8 and 9 plays 10. The way it works is 7 versus 8, the winner gets in to the playoffs. Number 8 loses to number 7. They then play the winner of number 9 versus number 10. And then that whoever wins, the loser 7-8 plays the winner of 9-10 for the last playoff spot. It sounds kludgy, seems crazy, seems like, where did they come up with this? Why? It seems
Keystone
ridiculous
Sports
to me,
Network.
Shaun. Except for one thing. It's one and done. And when you have one and done in sports, sign me up for it, because that's what's fun. It's what makes the NCAA tournament so great. One game, you win, you advance, you lose, you go home. There is something fantastic in sports about that. And as crazy as it seems, as weird as the model is, sign me up for it, Shaun, because it's one and done.
I completely agree with that. I don't love there's these Final Four teams that can get in any different combination. It's a little tacky to me, but like you said, it makes for some great basketball. And seeing these guys in the NBA who for so much of the regular season you see play nonchalantly, especially when you're not one of the top teams in your conference, you're kind of like, this isn't really that important. If you're number 1, 2, or 3 seed, you're trying to keep that home court advantage. But if you kind of fall into the mix, win or loss, it's not that big of a deal. Now we see guys go out and really play their best, and it does make entertaining basketball. So I'm not a huge, I live and die by the play-in tournament like some other people are, but you know what? I am excited to tune in when the stakes are finally high for a game. And it's kind of like that prep for the playoffs now is how I look at it as, hey, all right, regular season's over. We're getting ready for playoff basketball. Here's kind of your interlude for the playoffs. So that's how I look at it. And, do I think any of the teams in the play-in tournament are going to go on to make a run this year? Absolutely not. I would bet they're all out in the first round this year, but it does make for some entertaining individual games that we get to see here.
It really does. And you brought up the point, the regular season, there's 82 games. I don't know if any team really puts much effort into any one individual game, that it's important. It feels like 82 games to go through the motions. So yes, to have just a single game actually means something. Like I said, sign me up for that, Shaun. All right. Well, the play-in is just the prelude to the actual playoffs, where it's a series. It's not a one and done. So even at that, especially when you get to the 7-game series, there lacks that critical game. Yes, everyone's important, but oftentimes, as the saying goes, until you lose on the road, the playoffs, the series hasn't started yet. Okay, but we do have some intriguing matchups. I was curious, what are the matchups that you are particularly looking forward to?
That's a great question with this play-in tournament, and I'm gonna say I couldn't care less about what's going on in the Eastern Conference because I don't think there's anybody that can match up with the Boston Celtics. So Knicks, Pistons, great. Pacers, Bucks, great. I hope it's entertaining, but I'm not intrigued by that because I think whoever goes to face Boston is losing. Now in the West, I think this is where it gets really interesting. Lakers, Timberwolves. I do think the Lakers get past the Timberwolves here. I think Minnesota is dangerous. They may take it to 6 games. I don't think it's a 7-game series, but Nuggets Clippers is what I'm very intrigued by. Now, Denver Nuggets, right? Fired Michael Malone with 5 games left to go in the regular season, and we still don't know exactly the reason behind that. Something had to happen. He was kind of looking like he'd be a legacy coach in Denver, won the championship there, seemed to be very liked by the players. Something had to happen. That kind of blew everything up in Denver, but you still have Nikola Jokic, who just finished averaging a triple-double as a center, which is absolutely incredible. And the Denver Nuggets, as long as he's playing, are always a contender. But now you take on a Los Angeles Clippers team that all of a sudden for the last month of the regular season may have been the best team in the NBA. Kawhi Leonard finally seems to be fully healthy. And he might be one of the only players who hasn't played in about 3 years that came on and is, bam, averaging 30 right away, right when he steps back on the court fully healthy. James Harden's playing good basketball. The Clippers are a pretty well-rounded roster. I think that's going to be a very incredible series. Nuggets, Clippers, and also I got to say Clippers' new home stadium, Intuit Turbo Dome, has been exciting, and they play phenomenal basketball there. That's a home court advantage right there in the playoffs. So I think both of those teams can beat each other and can really pull off an upset in the West. And I think there's 4 or 5 teams that could end up winning the West this year. So, Jim, I am so looking forward to watching the Western Conference in the playoffs this year.
I think you're right. It is more interesting out West. It's not just your West Coast bias living out in LA. I'm an East Coast guy and would typically be, more interested in the East. It's fascinating to me and not following the regular season closely until second half of the season, it starts to, now we start to see it take shape for the playoffs. And I was astounded to see, you mentioned, it's the Celtics and everybody else in the East, but the Celtics aren't the number 1 seed of all teams. The Cleveland Cavaliers. That to me is just crazy. The only thing crazier is that out West, it's Oklahoma City as the number 1 seed, Shaun, which is crazy to me. But you know what? When I look at the playoff setup, I realize again, the NBA is a players' league. It's about individual players. It's about the stars. And those are the ones that intrigue me. You already mentioned it. Nikola Jokic, he's probably the best player in the NBA. And a good amount of the public is not aware of that, of just how good he is. You mentioned triple-double. I'd like to see Denver succeed just so people could appreciate how good this guy is. He's the center. He leads in scoring. He leads in rebounding. He leads in assists. And if you have seen some of his highlights, just a tremendous passer. What a weapon that he is, Shaun. The other one that intrigues me are the Lakers. Again, doesn't matter who they're playing, but it's just LeBron and Luka. Now in the playoffs, everything else, the balance of the regular season when he came over in just one of those stunning trades that just shocked everybody. Okay, the rest of the regular season, irrelevant. Meaningless, Shaun. Meaningless. Again, it's that 82-game exercise nobody cares about, including the players. Now we get to see if it worked or not. Can these 2 superstars carry a team? That's what's going to make me watch that game, seeing those 2 guys play, Shaun.
I completely agree. And as a Laker fan, this is the most excited I've been for the playoffs in a long time. And the Lakers made a run 2 years ago, got to the Western Conference Finals, but seeing Luka and LeBron on the court together now, 2 guys who have both willed their teams to the finals. LeBron 8 straight years in the East where he went to the finals, obviously one with the Lakers in 2020. And then Luka willed the Mavericks to the finals last year. I did not think the Dallas Mavericks were built to make a run to the NBA Finals last season, even with Kyrie Irving there. And Luka turned it on in the playoffs and single-handedly just took down franchises. So now you have those 2 guys who, as you said, have looked good together so far in the regular season, but that really doesn't matter. It's about how they look now. And I think both of these guys are ready to lock in. And I think LeBron knows that, hey, I've got finite years left right now. And this is a realistic shot for me to get another ring. And Luka has got to be thinking, hey, Dallas Mavericks, F you. Watch me go win a ring right now, this year, the same year you traded me, and see how that trade and your return on investment is when you trade away me. So I think both of these guys have motivations on different aspects that are going to come together, and the roster is looking really. Reeves has stepped up to be that third scorer for them. The defense has stepped up collectively, and I got to say too, a lot of people criticize the Lakers for hiring JJ Redick as their head coach. I was pro JJ Redick just because I knew what his basketball intelligence was. And he's been a player's coach for them. And you said this league is run by players. If you have a coach, and we've seen a lot of coaching firings recently because they seemingly don't connect with players, JJ Redick has found out how to connect with players on all different levels, young to LeBron to Luka. And he's done an incredible job there. And I think that the Lakers are must-watch TV this postseason.
I think so also. I'm a big Luka guy. So I still cannot comprehend what Dallas was thinking. Dallas's loss, it was the Lakers' gain. All right, that's going to be the final word, Shaun. Hey, enjoy the playoffs. And guess what? Next week, we'll have the NFL draft coming up. I'm sure that will be our number one topic. Until then, thank you for listening. We'll see you next week on Shauns Take.
Keystone Sports Network.